I never thought a Tuesday morning in February would end with me standing on my front porch in 17-degree weather, watching two police officers approach my house while a middle-aged woman with an asymmetrical blonde bob screamed about community standards from 3 houses down. My name is Quentin Xavier, and I had moved to Riverside, Colorado just 4 months earlier. The small city sits about 20 miles east of Denver, close enough to the mountains to get buried in snow during winter, but far enough that most people thought of it as the suburbs. I bought my house in October, a nice 3-bedroom ranch on Pinewood Drive that needed some work, but had good bones and a price I could actually afford. The sellers were an elderly couple moving to Florida, eager to close quickly, and I was eager to finally own something that was mine after years of throwing money away on rent in Chicago. Everything seemed perfect. The neighborhood was quiet, mostly families and retirees, with mature trees lining the streets and well-maintained homes. My property sat at the very end of Pinewood Drive, where the street dead ended into a stretch of undeveloped land owned by the county. According to my realtor and the title company, my house had never been part of the Pinewood Springs Homeowners Association that governed the other houses on the street. The original developer had planned to include my lot in the HOA back in 1987, but a surveying error revealed that my property actually extended past the planned HOA boundaries. Rather than redraw everything, they just excluded it. My deed explicitly stated that I was not subject to any HOA covenants or restrictions. I liked it that way. I had heard enough horror stories about HOAs from friends and coworkers over the years to know I dodged a bullet. No one could tell me what color to paint my shutters or whether I could park my truck in my own driveway. I kept my property neat because I took pride in it, not because some board of busybodies threatened me with fines. The first snowfall of the season came in late November, just a few inches that melted within days. I shoveled my driveway and the sidewalk in front of my house without thinking much about it. The second snow came in mid-December, dumping nearly a foot overnight. Again, I cleared my driveway and sidewalk. I noticed that most of my neighbors had their driveways plowed by a professional service, but I did not mind the workout. Besides, I had a good snow blower that made quick work of it. That was when I first encountered Karen Emerson. I was finishing up my driveway around 9 in the morning, my breath forming clouds in the frigid air, when a silver Lexus SUV pulled up to the curb. A woman in her late 40s stepped out, dressed in a puffy white North Face jacket and designer boots that had clearly never seen actual snow before she moved to Colorado. Her blonde hair was cut in that asymmetrical style that seemed popular with a certain demographic, shorter in the back and longer in the front. She wore oversized sunglasses despite the overcast sky. "Excuse me," she called out, picking her way carefully across the snowy street. "You must be the new owner here. I'm Karen Emerson, president of the Pinewood Springs HOA. I turned off the snow blower. "Quentin Xavier, nice to meet you," she smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "I wanted to welcome you to the neighborhood and remind you about the snow removal policy. All homeowners are required to have their driveways and walkways cleared within 12 hours of snowfall ending. We have a contracted service that handles this for a quarterly fee. I don't see your name on the payment list." "That's because I'm not part of the HOA," I said. "My property isn't included in the association," her smile faltered. "I think you're mistaken. Every home on Pinewood Drive is part of Pinewood Springs. Not mine," I gestured toward my house. "It's in the deed. This lot was excluded when the HOA was formed, surveying issue back in the 80s. Karen's expression hardened. I've been president of this HOA for 6 years, and I've never heard anything about an exempted property. You'll need to provide proof of that claim." "I don't need to prove anything to you," I said, keeping my tone polite but firm. "But if you want to verify it, you can check with the county recorder's office. My deed is public record." She stared at me for a long moment, her jaw tight. "We'll see about that. In the meantime, I expect you to maintain your property to community standards. This neighborhood has a reputation to uphold." "My property looks fine," I said. "I just finished clearing the snow, as you can see." "For now," she said. "But winter is long in Colorado, Mr. Xavier. The HOA snow removal service ensures consistent and timely clearing throughout the season. Individual homeowners can be unreliable." "I think I can manage to shovel my own driveway," I said. Karen pulled out her phone and tapped at the screen. "We'll be in touch regarding the dues." The quarterly assessment is $950, covering snow removal, lawn care during the growing season, and general maintenance of common areas. Since you missed the December 1st deadline, there will be a late fee. "I'm not paying anything," I said, "because I'm not in your HOA." "We'll see," she repeated, then turned and picked her way back to her Lexus. I figured that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days later, I found a formal letter in my mailbox from the Pinewood Springs Homeowners Association. It was printed on expensive letterhead and signed by Karen Emerson in her capacity as president. The letter informed me that I was delinquent on my quarterly dues and faced a late fee of $50 in addition to the standard $950. It provided payment instructions and warned that failure to remit payment within 14 days would result in additional penalties and potential legal action. I called my real estate attorney, Patricia Morrison, who had handled my closing. She laughed when I explained the situation. "They try this sometimes," she said. "HOAs can be very aggressive about collecting dues, and they don't always do their homework. Send them a copy of your deed with the relevant sections highlighted. That should shut them up." I followed her advice, sending a certified letter to the HOA with copies of my deed and the relevant county records showing that my property had never been included in their jurisdiction. I thought that would resolve everything. The next letter arrived in mid-January. This one was from Karen Emerson personally, not on HOA letterhead. She wrote that while she had reviewed my documents, she believed there had been an error in the deed and that my property should have been included in the HOA. She demanded that I pay the dues plus late fees, which now totaled over $1,000 with accrued penalties. She also informed me that the HOA board had voted to pursue legal action if I did not comply. I called Patricia Morrison again. "This is harassment," I said. "What can I do about it?" "Write back and tell them to cease contact," Patricia advised. "Make it clear that any further communication should go through your attorney. If they continue to harass you, we can look at filing a complaint or seeking a restraining order." But honestly, most HOAs back off once they realize they are wrong. They don't want to waste money on legal fees for a case they will definitely lose. I sent another certified letter, this one more firmly worded, explaining that I would not respond to any further demands for payment and that any future correspondence should be directed to my attorney. I included Patricia's contact information. For a few weeks, things went quiet. We got another significant snowfall in late January, and I cleared my driveway and sidewalk as usual. I noticed Karen driving by slowly several times, obviously checking whether I was keeping up with the snow removal. My property looked just as good as anyone else's on the street, so she had nothing to complain about. Then came the snowstorm in early February, the one that buried the Front Range under 2 feet of heavy, wet snow. It started on a Sunday evening and did not stop until Tuesday morning. I spent most of Monday working from home, watching the snow pile up outside my windows. By Tuesday morning, my driveway was completely impassable, and the snow had drifted up to nearly 3 feet in some places. I called into work and took a vacation day. There was no way I was getting my car out of the garage until I dealt with the snow. I bundled up in layers, fired up the snow blower, and got to work. It was slow going. The snow was heavy and the blower kept clogging. I had to stop frequently to clear the chute. After 2 hours, I had maybe a quarter of the driveway done, and I was already exhausted. That was when Karen appeared. She walked right up my driveway, not bothering with the sidewalk, tramping through the snow I had not yet cleared. She wore the same puffy white jacket and those ridiculous boots. "Mr. Xavier," she said loudly over the noise of the snow blower, "we need to talk." I shut off the machine. "What do you want? You haven't paid your snow removal dues and your driveway is still covered in snow. This is unacceptable." "The HOA service cleared everyone else's driveways at 6 this morning. Your property is bringing down the whole neighborhood." "It's 10 o'clock, I said. "I'm working on it. And as I've explained multiple times, I'm not in your HOA. I don't owe you any money." "You're being a bad neighbor," Karen said. "Everyone else pays their share. Everyone else contributes to the community. But you think you are special. You think the rules don't apply to you." "The rules literally don't apply to me," I said. "That's what being outside the HOA means." Her face was turning red, and not just from the cold. "I am giving you one last chance to do the right thing. Pay the dues, which now total $1,200 with late fees, or face the consequences." "What consequences?" I asked. "You have no authority over my property. You can't fine me. You can't put a lien on my house. You have zero legal standing." "We'll see about that," Karen said. She pulled out her phone and started dialing. "If you won't listen to reason, maybe you will listen to the police. You're calling the cops on me for not paying dues to an HOA I'm not part of." I could not believe what I was hearing. "I'm calling them because you are creating a public nuisance," she said. "Your failure to maintain your property is a safety hazard." I looked at my driveway. Yes, it still had a lot of snow on it, but so did the undeveloped county land beyond my property. And several of my neighbors still had snow in their yards and on their walkways, even if their driveways were clear. There was nothing remotely hazardous about my property. "This is ridiculous," I said. "But go ahead, call them." She did. I stood there in the cold, my snow blower idling beside me, while Karen spoke to whoever answered at the Riverside Police Department. I could only hear her side of the conversation, but she was laying it on thick, talking about uncleared snow creating dangerous conditions, and an uncooperative resident refusing to maintain his property and violating community standards. She ended the call and looked at me triumphantly. "They're sending someone out. Maybe you will take this seriously now." "I take property law seriously," I said. "Which is why I know you don't have a leg to stand on." Karen turned and marched back down my driveway, leaving deep footprints in the snow I had not yet cleared. She went to her house, which was 3 doors down, and I could see her standing in her front window watching me. I went back to clearing snow. I figured the cops would show up. I would explain the situation, and they would tell Karen to stop wasting their time. Easy. The police cruiser arrived about 20 minutes later. 2 officers got out, both bundled up against the cold. One was a younger guy, maybe late 20s, with a name tag that read Officer Brennan. The other was older, probably in his 40s, and his tag said Officer Martinez. "Morning," Officer Martinez said as they approached. "We got a call about a property maintenance issue. You the homeowner?" "I am," I said. "Quentin Xavier." And before you waste any more time, you should know that the person who called you is the president of the local HOA, which my property is not part of. She's harassing me because I won't pay dues I don't owe." Officer Martinez glanced at his partner, then back at me. "Why don't you walk us through what is going on?" I explained the whole situation, starting with buying the house and discovering it was not part of the HOA, through Karen's repeated demands for payment, to her showing up that morning and threatening consequences. I told them I had documentation proving my property was not subject to the HOA and that I had already consulted with an attorney. "So you're clearing your driveway now?" Officer Brennan asked, gesturing at the snow blower and the partially cleared driveway. "I am. I took the day off work specifically to deal with this. It's a lot of snow, so it is taking time." Officer Martinez nodded slowly. "And the person who called, she's saying you're violating HOA rules. That's what she claims. But again, I'm not in the HOA. She has no authority over my property." "Wait here a minute," Officer Martinez said. The two officers walked back to their cruiser and conferred for a few minutes. I saw them looking at paperwork, probably the call notes. Then they walked down to Karen's house. I could not hear what was said, but I could see Karen gesturing animatedly, pointing at my house and my driveway. The officers stood there, listening and occasionally asking questions. This went on for about 5 minutes before they came back to where I was standing. "All right, Mr. Xavier," Officer Martinez said. "We talked to Miss Emerson. She claims you're part of the HOA and refusing to pay dues. She says you're creating a hazard by not clearing your snow in a timely manner." "My driveway is on my private property," I said. "The sidewalk in front of my house is the only public area, and I always clear that. As for being part of the HOA, I have proof that I'm not. I can show you the deed right now if you want to come inside." Officer Martinez held up a hand. "That's not necessary. This sounds like a civil dispute between you and the HOA. It's not a police matter." "That's what I tried to tell her," I said. "However," Officer Brennan added, "you do need to make sure your sidewalk is clear. City ordinance requires sidewalks to be cleared within 24 hours of snowfall ending. After that, it is a code violation." "The snow stopped falling about 2 hours ago," I said. "I have plenty of time." "Fair enough," Officer Martinez said. "Just make sure you get it done." They started walking back to their cruiser, but I called after them. "Officers, what about the harassment? She's been sending me letters demanding money I don't owe, and now she's calling the police on me for no reason. Is there anything I can do about that?" Officer Martinez turned back. "If you believe you're being harassed, you can file a complaint. But honestly, this sounds like something you should handle through your attorney. If she's making false claims about your property being in the HOA, that's a civil matter." They left. I watched them drive past Karen's house without stopping again. She was still standing in her window, and I could tell from her body language that she was not happy with how things had turned out. I went back to clearing snow. It took me another 3 hours to finish the driveway and sidewalk. By the time I was done, my back ached and my hands were numb despite my gloves. But my property looked good, just as clear as everyone else's on the street. I thought that would be the end of it. The police had basically told Karen it was not their problem, so surely she would back off. But Karen Emerson was not the type to back off. The next day, I got a call from Patricia Morrison. "Quentin, I received a very strange letter from the Pinewood Springs HOA," she said. "They're claiming that you've been trespassing on HOA common areas and that they're considering filing for an injunction to prevent you from using the street." "What? That's insane. Pinewood Drive is a public street. It's maintained by the city." "Actually, according to this letter, it's a private street maintained by the HOA. They're saying that since you're not a member and you haven't paid dues, you don't have access rights. I sat down heavily on my couch. Can they do that? Almost certainly not, Patricia said. But I need to do some research. If the street really is private, there might be an easement issue. However, given that your property predates the HOA, you would likely have grandfathered rights to access. This is just them trying to intimidate you. It's working, I admitted. I need that street to get to my house. If they somehow block me from using it, I'm trapped. They won't be able to block you, Patricia assured me. But let me look into this and get back to you. In the meantime, don't respond to any more letters from them. Forward everything to me. Over the next week, things escalated. I started getting daily letters from the HOA, each one more threatening than the last. They claimed I owed over $1,500 now with accumulated late fees. They said they were filing a lien against my property. They threatened to sue me for damages to the neighborhood's reputation and property values. I forwarded everything to Patricia, who seemed more amused than concerned. They're throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks, she said. None of this has any legal merit. They can't file a valid lien because you're not subject to their authority. They can't sue you for damages because they haven't suffered any. This is all bluster. Should I be worried about the street access thing? I asked. I looked into it. Pinewood Drive is definitely a public street. It's maintained by the Riverside Public Works Department, and it's designated as a public right-of-way on all city maps. The HOA claiming it's private is just nonsense. They have zero ability to restrict your access. That made me feel better, but the constant barrage of letters was wearing on me. I started dreading checking my mailbox, and Karen had apparently told other HOA members about our dispute because some of my neighbors started acting cold toward me. One couple I had chatted with a few times at the mailbox now ignored me completely. Another neighbor, an older man named George who lived next door, stopped by to tell me I should just pay the dues to keep the peace. It's not worth all this trouble, George said. Just pay it and move on. It's the principle, I said. I'm not paying money for services I don't need to an organization I'm not part of. If I give in now, they will keep pushing. George shrugged. Suit yourself. But Karen doesn't let things go. She once spent 8 months fighting with a guy who painted his mailbox the wrong shade of brown. That did not exactly comfort me. The breaking point came in late February. We got another snowstorm, not as big as the previous one but still substantial. I cleared my driveway and sidewalk as usual. I was outside finishing up when Karen drove by, slowed down, and rolled down her window. Still refusing to contribute to the community, I see, she called out. I ignored her and kept working. You're a selfish person, Mr. Xavier, she continued. You benefit from living in a nice neighborhood, but you won't pay your fair share to maintain it. People like you are parasites. I shut off the snow blower and walked over to her car. Karen, I've been patient. I've explained the situation multiple times. I've provided documentation. I've had my lawyer contact you. What is it going to take for you to understand that I am not part of your HOA and I don't owe you anything? I understand that you're a liar, she said. I've lived in this neighborhood for 18 years. Every house on this street is part of Pinewood Springs. You probably forged those documents you sent us. I stared at her. You think I forged my deed? I think you're a con artist who is trying to cheat the system, and I'm not going to let you get away with it. She rolled up her window and drove off before I could respond. That evening, I called Patricia Morrison and told her what Karen had said. She accused you of forging your deed. Patricia sounded incredulous. That's a serious accusation. That could actually be defamation if she says it to other people. What should I do? Let me send a cease and desist letter. If she doesn't back off after that, we can look at more aggressive options. But Quentin, I have to be honest with you. Fighting an HOA, even one you're not actually part of, can be expensive and time-consuming. You might want to consider just blocking their letters and ignoring them until they give up. How long will that take? Hard to say. Could be weeks, could be months. Some HOAs are incredibly persistent. I thought about it. I had already spent several $100s on legal fees just for Patricia to review documents and send letters. If this turned into an actual court case, it could cost thousands. And for what? To prove something that was already clearly documented in public records. But the alternative was to let Karen Emerson harass me indefinitely, and that did not sit well with me either. Send the cease and desist, I said. Let's see if that does anything. Patricia sent the letter the next day. It was strongly worded, citing harassment and defamation, and demanding that the HOA immediately cease all contact with me regarding dues or membership. It warned that any further contact would result in legal action. For about a week, it seemed to work. I did not get any letters. Karen did not drive by. Things were quiet. Then I came home from work on a Thursday evening to find a bright orange sticker on my front door. It was from the City of Riverside Code Enforcement Division, notifying me of a violation. According to the sticker, I had failed to maintain my property in accordance with city codes, and I needed to correct the violation within 10 days or face fines. I pulled out my phone and called the number on the sticker. A bored-sounding woman answered and pulled up my case number. It says here there was a complaint about snow not being removed from your sidewalk, she said. An inspector came out and confirmed the violation. When was this inspection done? I asked. I heard her typing. Yesterday afternoon at approximately 2:15. That's impossible, I said. I was home yesterday afternoon working from home. No one came to my house, and my sidewalk was completely clear. We haven't had any snow in over a week. Well, the inspector documented the violation, she said. If you believe it's in error, you can request a reinspection or appeal to the Code Enforcement Board. I want a reinspection. Can someone come out tomorrow? I can schedule you for next week. Tuesday afternoon is the earliest available. That's 5 days from now. Fine, schedule it. She took my information and gave me a confirmation number. I hung up and stared at the orange sticker on my door. Someone had filed a false complaint with the city, and I had a pretty good idea who. I took photos of my front walk, which was completely clear, and emailed them to Patricia Morrison with an explanation of what happened. She called me back within an hour. This is getting out of hand, she said. Filing false code complaints is illegal. If we can prove Karen is behind this, we could pursue charges. How do we prove it? We could submit a public records request for the complaint. Code enforcement has to keep records of who files complaints. It might be anonymous, but if there's any identifying information, we will get it. Do it, I said. I'm done playing nice. Patricia filed the records request that evening. It would take the city a few days to process it, but at least we were taking action. The re-inspection happened the following Tuesday. I took half a day off work to be there. The inspector was a middle-aged man named Doug who seemed annoyed to be there. Someone filed a complaint about your sidewalk not being cleared, he said, looking at his clipboard. The complaint was false, I said. My sidewalk is always clear. You can ask any of my neighbors. Doug walked the length of my sidewalk, examining it carefully. Looks fine to me, no violation. So the citation will be removed. I'll update the case file. The citation will be dismissed. What happens to the person who filed a false complaint? Doug shrugged. Depends. If it was an honest mistake, nothing. If there's a pattern of false complaints, we can pursue it. But that's above my pay grade, He left, and I felt a small sense of victory. At least the citation was gone. The public records request came back on Thursday. Patricia called me as soon as she reviewed it. The complaint was filed by phone, she said. The caller identified herself as a concerned neighbor but didn't give a name. However, the city has caller ID records, and the number traces back to Karen Emerson's cell phone. So we have proof she filed a false complaint. We do. I'm going to contact the city attorney's office and the police department. Filing a false code complaint is a misdemeanor in Colorado. She could face charges. Will they actually prosecute her? Hard to say, Patricia admitted. These cases can be tough because you have to prove intent. She could claim she genuinely believed there was a violation. But at minimum, this gives us leverage. I'm going to send another letter to the HOA, this time informing them that we have evidence of criminal harassment and false complaints. That might finally scare them off. It did not scare them off. Instead, it made things worse. 2 days after Patricia sent the letter, I woke up on Saturday morning to find my mailbox had been knocked over. The wooden post was snapped clean off at the base, and the mailbox itself was dented and lying in the snow beside my driveway. It looked like someone had hit it with a car or a baseball bat. I called the police to report the vandalism. A different officer came out, took a report, and said they would patrol the area more frequently. But he was honest with me that unless there was video evidence or a witness, they probably would not catch whoever did it. I spent Saturday afternoon installing a new mailbox, this time with a metal post set in concrete. While I was working, George from next door came over. I heard about the mailbox, he said. That's rough. Yeah. You didn't happen to see anything, did you? George looked uncomfortable. No, but I heard some of the neighbors talking. They're not happy about all the trouble with the HOA. Some people think you should just pay the dues and be done with it. So they vandalized my mailbox. I'm not saying anyone from the neighborhood did it, George said quickly. Could have been kids. Could have been anyone. But I could tell he did not believe that any more than I did. The harassment continued over the next few weeks. Someone dumped trash on my lawn. My garbage cans kept getting knocked over. I found nails in my driveway that punctured 2 of my tires. Every incident was reported to the police, but they could never find who was responsible. Patricia advised me to install security cameras, which I did. I put up 4 high-definition cameras covering my driveway, front yard, and street. The harassment stopped almost immediately once the cameras were visible. But Karen was not done. In mid-March, I received a summons. The Pinewood Springs Homeowners Association was suing me for unpaid dues, late fees, and damages. The total amount they were claiming was over $8,000. I immediately called Patricia, who sounded more angry than I had ever heard her. This is frivolous, she said. They have no case whatsoever, but now we have to respond and defend it, which means more legal fees for you. How much is this going to cost me? If we can get it dismissed quickly, maybe a couple thousand. If they actually push it to trial, could be 10 or 15,000, maybe more. I felt sick. I can't afford that, I know, which is exactly what they're counting on. This is a slap suit, a strategic lawsuit against public participation. They're trying to bully you into settling by making it too expensive to fight. What do? We fight it, Patricia said. And we file a counterclaim for harassment, defamation, and abuse of process. We're going to make this hurt for them. Over the next few months, the lawsuit consumed my life. Patricia and I spent hours going over documents, preparing responses, and building our case. The discovery process was particularly satisfying because it revealed just how flimsy the HOA's case was. They could not produce any evidence that my property was ever part of the HOA. They could not show any damages. They could not even explain their legal theory for why I should be forced to pay dues. Meanwhile, our counterclaim was gaining traction. We had documented all the harassment, the false code complaint, and the suspicious vandalism incidents. We had the threatening letters and Karen's accusation that I had forged my deed. We had proof that the HOA had continued contacting me after being told to cease and desist. The case was scheduled for a hearing in early August. Patricia was confident we would win, but I was still nervous. I had never been involved in a lawsuit before, and the stress was affecting my sleep and my work. The night before the hearing, Patricia called with unexpected news. "The HOA wants to settle," she said. "What? Why?" "Because they know they are going to lose. Their attorney finally convinced them that they have no case and that our counterclaim is strong. They want to drop the lawsuit and pay your legal fees if you'll agree not to pursue the counterclaim." "How much are they offering for legal fees?" "Full amount. Everything you've paid me plus the costs of the security cameras and the mailbox." I did the math in my head. That was close to $12,000, and I have to drop the counterclaim. That's the offer. "You can choose to proceed with the counterclaim, but it would mean more time, more money, and no guarantee of recovery even if we win. HOAs often have limited assets." "What do you think I should do?" Patricia was quiet for a moment. "Honestly, take the settlement. You'll be made whole financially, the harassment will stop, and you can move on with your life. Pursuing the counterclaim is more about punishment than recovery, and it's going to cost you more stress and time." I thought about it. Part of me wanted to see Karen and the HOA board face consequences for what they had put me through. But another part of me was just exhausted and wanted it to be over. "I'll take the settlement," I said. "But I wanted in writing that they acknowledge I'm not part of the HOA and that they'll never contact me again. I'll make sure that's in the settlement agreement." The hearing the next day was brief. Both attorneys presented the settlement to the judge, who approved it and dismissed both the lawsuit and the counterclaim. Karen was there in the courtroom, sitting with two other HOA board members. She would not look at me. Outside the courthouse, Patricia shook my hand. "Congratulations, you won." "It doesn't feel like winning," I said. "It feels like I just survived." "Sometimes that's the same thing." I got the settlement check 2 weeks later. It covered all my expenses, and I even had a little left over. The harassment stopped completely. Karen never drove by my house again. The other neighbors slowly warmed back up to me as word spread that the lawsuit had been dropped. Life went back to normal. I kept my property maintained, cleared my own snow in winter, and lived my life without any interference from the HOA. Then in October, almost exactly a year after I had bought my house, I got a call from George next door. "Have you heard?" he asked. "Heard what?" Karen Emerson resigned as HOA president. "Actually, the whole board resigned. There's going to be new elections." "Why?" "Apparently, some of the homeowners found out about the lawsuit and the settlement. They were pissed that the HOA spent thousands of dollars in legal fees on a case they had no chance of winning. There's talk of auditing the HOA finances because nobody can figure out where all the money went." I felt a grim satisfaction. Good. The new board is talking about changing how things are done. Less aggressive enforcement, more community focus, might actually make this a better place to live. After we hung up, I stood on my front porch and looked out at Pinewood Drive. The trees were starting to turn color, gold and red leaves mixing with the green. It was a beautiful street in a nice neighborhood. Despite everything that had happened, I did not regret buying my house. But I was very, very glad I was not in the HOA. A few days later, I was getting my mail when a woman I did not recognize approached me. She was in her 30s, dressed casually in jeans and a fleece jacket. "Mr. Xavier?" I'm Rebecca Chen. I just joined the HOA board as treasurer. I wanted to introduce myself and apologize for everything that happened with the previous board. That's not necessary, I said. It is, though. I moved to the neighborhood 2 years ago, and I had no idea what was going on with your situation until recently. When I found out, I was appalled. Karen and the others had no right to harass you like that. Well, it's over now. I also wanted you to know that we've been reviewing the HOA finances. The legal fees from your case, plus some other questionable expenses, add up to over $30,000. We're considering whether to pursue action against the former board members for mismanagement. That caught my attention. $30,000, at least. There are payments to attorneys, payments to private investigators, and several large cash withdrawals that are marked as miscellaneous. It's a mess. We might need to bring in a forensic accountant. Private investigators. They hired investigators, Rebecca nodded. Apparently Karen was trying to find some evidence that you really were part of the HOA or that you had broken some law. She spent thousands of the HOA's money on it. And of course found nothing. I shook my head in disbelief. That's insane. It gets worse. We found emails showing that Karen had been in contact with the developer who originally built this neighborhood. She was trying to get them to say there had been an error in your deed. The developer told her there was no error and that your exclusion from the HOA was intentional and properly documented. She ignored that and kept pushing. So, what happens now? The HOA membership is voting on whether to pursue legal action against Karen and the other former board members. If it passes, we'll be filing suit to recover the misappropriated funds. I can't say more than that right now, but I wanted you to know that we're taking this seriously. She handed me her business card. If you ever have any concerns or issues, please reach out to me directly. The new board wants to be good neighbors, not bullies. After she left, I went inside and told my girlfriend, Emma, about the conversation. She had moved in with me over the summer after the lawsuit was settled. You think they will actually sue the old board? She asked. I don't know. But if they embezzled HOA funds, they should face consequences. Emma nodded. At least it sounds like the new board is more reasonable. Yeah. Maybe things will actually get better around here. 2 months later, in December, I was reading the local newspaper online when I saw a headline that made me sit up straight. Former HOA president faces embezzlement charges. I clicked on the article and read quickly. Karen Emerson and 2 other former Pinewood Springs HOA board members had been arrested and charged with theft and embezzlement. According to the article, an audit had revealed that they had stolen over $40,000 from the HOA over a 3-year period. The money had been used for personal expenses, undocumented cash withdrawals, and legal fees for frivolous lawsuits, including the case against me. The article quoted the Riverside police chief. This investigation began after the current HOA board reported financial irregularities. We take allegations of embezzlement very seriously, particularly when the victims are homeowners who trusted their elected representatives to manage community funds responsibly. I called Patricia Morrison immediately. Did you see the news about Karen? I did, Patricia said. I actually got a call from the prosecutor's office yesterday. They want to interview you as a potential witness. The money spent on the lawsuit against you is part of the evidence of misappropriation. Will I have to testify? Possibly, if it goes to trial. But most of these cases end in plea deals. I doubt Karen wants to face a jury. Patricia was right. In February, Karen Emerson pleaded guilty to 1 count of theft and 1 count of misappropriation of HOA funds. She was sentenced to 2 years probation, ordered to pay full restitution to the HOA, and banned from serving on any HOA board in Colorado. The other 2 former board members received similar sentences. The restitution alone was substantial, over $60,000 once all the expenses and legal fees were calculated. I heard through George that Karen had to sell her house to pay it. She moved out of the neighborhood in March, and I never saw her again. The new HOA board, led by Rebecca Chen and several other reasonable people, completely reformed how Pinewood Springs operated. They reduced dues, cut unnecessary expenses, and focused on actual community benefits rather than enforcement and harassment. They even reached out to me several times to make sure there were no hard feelings and to invite me to neighborhood events, despite my non-member status. I appreciated the gesture, and Emma and I did start attending some of the community gatherings. It turned out that most of my neighbors were actually decent people who had just been caught up in Karen's crusade. Once she was gone, the whole atmosphere of the neighborhood changed for the better. One evening in late spring, almost 2 years after I had first moved to Pinewood Drive, I was sitting on my front porch with Emma, watching the sunset. The street was quiet, kids playing in a yard down the block, someone grilling in their backyard. "You ever regret buying this house?" Emma asked. I thought about it. The harassment, the stress, the legal fees, the months of anxiety, all of that had been real and difficult, but it was over now and I had my home, my peace, and my rights intact. "No," I said. "I don't regret it at all. This is my house on my terms. And nobody can take that away from me." Emma smiled and squeezed my hand. "Good, because I really like it here." "Me too," I said. "Me too." The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Down the street, I could hear laughter and music from someone's yard. It sounded like a party, neighbors gathered together enjoying the warm weather. It sounded like a real community, the kind built on mutual respect rather than rules and threats. The kind of community I was happy to be part of, HOA or not. And as I sat there on my porch in my house, on my property that I owned free and clear of any HOA obligations, I realized that standing up for myself had been worth it. It would have been easier to pay the money, to give in, to let Karen have her way. But easy is not always right. Sometimes you have to fight for what is yours, even when it is hard, even when it costs you time and money and stress. Because if you don't stand up for yourself, nobody else will. I learned that lesson on Pinewood Drive, and it was a lesson I would carry with me for the rest of my life. The right to control my own property, to make my own decisions, to live my life without interference from people who had no authority over me. Those rights were worth fighting for. Karen Emerson had tried to take those rights away through intimidation and abuse of process. She had failed and in the end faced the consequences of her actions. Justice had been served, not just for me but for all the homeowners she had stolen from. The neighborhood was better now. The HOA was better now. And I was still right where I belonged, in my house at the end of Pinewood Drive, living exactly as I chose. That was victory enough for me.